And now for something completely different.
Smoke medical weed every day.
The following thoughts on Hoppe Hour represent Ryan Hoppe and Facet. Listener discretion is advised.
Live from Tampa Bay, you are tuned in to Hoppe Hour.
He's the voice of a generation that got screwed by the baby boomers. Welcome back to Hoppe Hour.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour starts in 4, 3, 2, Hoppe. Hoppe, Hoppe. This is Hoppe Hour with Hoppe.
What's going on? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe. And let's get right into it. On the phone line, I have known this man for 11 years now, going back to 2013 at the 25th anniversary of the morning show boot camp. You can hear him every morning on 102.5 KZOK in Seattle, the BJ Shea and Sarah morning show. The one and only legend known as BJ Shea is on Hoppe Hour. What's up, bro?
Hoppe, I'm happy to be part of that generation that screwed you over, brother. We're proud of it, baby.
Hell yeah. I love whenever I interview a boomer, they always bring up that drop I have, including Bob Rivers. Bob even admitted that he is a part of the generation that screwed over us. So even when a guy like Bob Rivers is able to admit it, that's when you know there's some truth to it.
Hey, what the hell? The boomers, we raised millennials, so I don't know why anyone's got problems with millennials. We're the ones that did it. So really, it's the circle is complete. We screwed you, but we're the ones that created you. So hey, let's go, baby. Let's you know what? Let's gang up on the Gen Xers. They're just sitting there and not doing anything. I think we should just gang up on them.
I think about that a lot with the fact that baby boomers and Gen Xers rip into millennials and now Gen Z a lot. And it's like, but you guys gave birth to us. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah, well, I want to team up with the Zoomers. First of all, it rhymes, boomers and Zoomers. And we'll go after Gen X. We'll go after everybody at this point.
I've been feeling, I don't want to say old recently, but I go on TikTok about 5 or 6 times a day, and I'm seeing videos where Gen Z talk about millennials as if we're the old generation. Like there was this video that had a ton of likes, and it was this kid, and he was like saying, I feel like us Zoomers need to team up with the millennials. And I was like, just the fact that I was like a part of a separate thing, I was like, man, this is getting weird.
It is weird, dude. It's like before you're going to turn around and you're going to go, wait, when did I get this old? It's a weird thing to be the old guy. And for me, to the idea that like boomer, which used to be such a great thing to be, is back in the days of when Billy Idol was, which is ironically Billy Idol, who was part of a band called Generation X. He's actually a boomer. He's not even a Gen Xer. We were the young guys. We were the ones, man, and. It's just so nuts to turn around and go, oh, we're the old people that that everybody else is just waiting to die. It's like, oh, when did that happen?
It's funny. He resides on the Gen X / baby boomer list, but I interviewed Bill Michaels from the Dwyer and Michaels show about 2 weeks ago. And he said
great show. Great show.
I listen to them a lot. You, him, Rick Rumble are some people I listen to on my way to work. And when I asked Bill about radio and that, he said 2 things. That he felt old when somebody during a panel said that they grew up listening to Dwyer and Michaels, and that it was weird for them because they always felt like they were the up-and-comers in the 90s and 2000s, and that it was weird being one of the older ones in those panels, in rooms.
It is so trippy. And I remember what he was talking about because I remember being at those conventions. And Dwyer and Michaels were the up-and-comers, and they did so many amazing things. And we're all sitting there going, wow, who are these guys? They're just insane. And, of course, they've been in business for so long and so successful for so long that eventually those years tick by, and, you turn around and you go, oh, I'm a legend now. It's like it went from up-and-comer to legend, which I think you could definitely call those guys.
It was funny. I typed in BJ Shea and then the word Ryan Hoppe to try to find our picture from the morning show boot camp because I had a flash drive of all the pictures and everything I've ever done. And pretty much what happened was the flash drive got like dirty. So I lost everything. So everything's online, but I got to search for it. And it was crazy to just see the like youth in my eyes. I think it was 2014 or maybe 17. I looked the same. But like, I'm not saying I don't smile the same, BJ. but that was kind of when I was just doing promotions in radio, or maybe even doing my college radio show. And it's crazy how, as much as I love the business, the longer you're in it, it's not that it like ages you, but I feel like you begin to smile differently. The like childish energy of like, oh my God, I'm in radio. It becomes a job that you need a ton of coffee for.
Well, and you went through a lot too, Hoppy. I mean, we obviously, about your career, about your struggles with people just not, treating you right, or and people not taking you seriously, and that can happen. It takes a lot out of you when you jump in the business, and I remember that too when I was young. Like, oh, I can't wait, this is exciting, and then there's just stuff that happens in our business, and it comes from bad management that will take that joy out of your eyes. And it's something that I think our industry has to take a look at, is how they treat people, especially young people like you, who then I was so happy that you wanted to be in our business. And, a lot of folks like me and Rick Rumble and guys that were kind to you, but then how many people were not kind to you? And I think that contributes a lot to how your smile will change.
Well, also, my boss at my new job that I keep low key, because it's a conservative company, and it's not that I'm not conservative, but I hate the word shock jock, but I'm edgy, so I keep it private, but I have a full-time job during the day, and he told me like that you reap what you sow, and I noticed this isn't even about people I used to work with that are jerks. It's more, I notice in general, you reap what you sow, in the fact that you can do really well in life in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. But I notice once you get to your late 40s and 50s, I feel like karma comes back to you for all the times you treated people badly, because then the list gets longer and longer. And then a lot of times those people don't have morals, so they have skeletons in their closet that they're hiding, and then it all comes out. I don't want to say it makes me happy when it happens, because I truly don't wish bad things upon people. But it is kind of funny when you see the things that people were doing to others when it happens to them, and they're like, I don't like the taste of my own medicine. And it's like, that's how you treated people for about 30 years. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's a line in the world of behavioral science, which is hurt people hurt people. And that's what I've come to know, because look, depending upon who you talk to about me, Hoppy, they'll tell you that, I was not the greatest guy in the world myself. As a matter of fact, there's a broadcaster who, she came to me, she said, I was just talking to somebody else that, knows of you and knows how you went to morning show boot camp. And they said there's this reputation that some older people have of you not being a great guy. And it's like, yeah, it's true. I had a lot of issues. I was very mentally unhealthy. I had been hurt a lot in life. And rather than try to figure out how to get through it, I was a hurt person that turned around and hurt people. Fortunately for me, I figured it out at a younger age, because my kids were also getting hurt by me. And they were like, dude, if you want to be a dad in our lives, you better figure it out. Otherwise, you're not going to be in our lives. And so I was able to really get that together. And now I'm on a path of, I don't want to hurt anybody. I just want to be as helpful as possible. But you're right. A lot of times people don't face that, and then it gets ugly as they get older. It's not pretty.
I noticed I don't want to say I did a deep dive on you about a month ago, but I was just I like looking up a lot of the people I know and looking at their YouTube videos. And I've known you since 2013. And I feel like that might have been when you began to change, because I was watching some vlogs you did at your old station in 2008, and oh my God, I did not know that BJ Shea, man.
No, that was an angry time in 2008. That's for sure. And there was a lot of turmoil in my life at that time in a lot of ways. And 2010, things started turning around. And I would say, but probably by 2011, 2012, Steve became basically officially the full-time co-host of my show. That's when things started to really get good professionally, in my opinion, for the show, as well as things got good in my life, because Steve was very stable. Steve was a talented guy. I mean, he still is. It's just we don't work together anymore. But yeah, and so that's where I think you're right, Hoppy. Things got really, really good and stable, and a lot of that has to do, I think, with the people that were around me, as well as the efforts I put into it. So it was that combo of good people around me and me really just taking responsibility for my life and and getting a little less angry. I mean, I still get every once in a while I'm a little angry, but not like I was back in '08. That's for sure.
What I love about Miggs is there's this saying I like to say, a lot of people say it differently, but I say, if you're as bad as you say you are, you don't have to say you're bad. You know what I mean? Like being a tough guy or being talented. And what I love about Miggs is like, whenever I'm at a boot camp and you're hanging out with guys like you and Miggs and other people, Brother Weeze, like you guys come off like the everyday common man, like the everyday average Joe. And I would never think that you guys talk to hundreds of thousands of people on the radio. Well, it's just like, it's a very humbling factor that Woody has it as well, where it's just like, you guys know you're talented, you guys know your worth, but you don't have to keep bringing it up every second.
Yeah, and that, I won't speak for Woody as to where he got that from, but you're right, Woody does have that, and Woody is such a great friend. And let me just give a shout out to Woody. He was so instrumental in getting me the job at iHeart here in Seattle when I went to morning show boot camp, which is why I tell everybody, if you can go to boot camp, go to boot camp. You will not believe the relationships that you make that will have a massive impact on your life. Woody literally, and this is why I got to tell you, man, once Woody heard that I was no longer, my contract wasn't going to be renewed at the old company, Woody, who was interviewing Bob Pittman, basically, the CEO and big guy for iHeart, Woody immediately said, wait a second, you're going to be a free agent? You're going to be available? He pulled me over, pulled Bob Pittman over, and said, you two have to meet each other right now. And I'm like, wow, there's no way a guy like me ever gets that kind of opportunity if not for somebody who cared, a friend like Woody. And he's a friend that I made at boot camp. And he's a very down-to-earth guy, just like you said, Hoppy. I definitely want to give a lot of love to him. And also a lot of love to Weeze. Weeze was a guy, you had to be down to earth. Weeze was not a poser. Weeze didn't really he didn't like a lot of people that would come up there and bang their chests and go to boot camp and go, here's how great I am. That wasn't Weeze. And so if you were going to work with Weeze, he just wasn't going to tolerate people around him behaving that way. So I learned a long time ago, which I'm so happy I learned that from Weeze, was like, hey, man, just be cool. No matter how successful or not successful you are, just be a cool human being. And that was a lesson Weeze gave me. And I think anybody that works with Weeze, they got that lesson too, man, because you're right. He's super down to earth, and Weeze is just ridiculously talented.
One thing I really like about Weeze is that he doesn't listen to a lot of radio, and I feel like he's being himself. Like, I'm a radio geek, so I listen to so many shows over the years that I feel like I have a little bit of this person and a little bit of that person in me, and I've really worked on being myself on air and not copying Opie and Anthony and things like that. But man, Weeze is an original. Like, there is never going to be another Brother Weeze.
Yeah, he wasn't a radio guy, and I was really fortunate to work with him. Early in the career where people were still trying to make him a radio guy, and he just didn't care. He's like, I don't listen to these other shows. I don't know what they're doing. I'm just doing what I think is fun. And I remember when I first worked with Weeze back in the late 80s, I got with him and I had all the DJ joke books, and, I was trained by people as a young broadcaster and thought, okay, I got everything I need to be great. Then I get to Weeze, and it was just like completely different. And he was, even the program directors were trying to tell me how to be and how to change Weeze. And it was like, how crazy are you? This guy he just knows how to be great and how to tell a story and how to be unique. And I had to throw everything out the window that I thought I knew about radio in order to actually work with Weeze. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And he had such a formula effect on my life. He's just one of those folks that make me what I am today. And you're right, man. He's his own thing. He was always his own thing. And yeah, radio won't see anything like him again.
Now, when you worked with Weeze, were you on his show at the same time as Greg Opie Hughes?
So Opie was an intern. Yeah, he started as an intern for our show, our station, when I was there. So that was a fun time. And yeah, so that's when he started when I was doing the show with Weeze. And man, you could just tell Opie, great attitude, great mind. And, you could just, it's so funny. There's this other guy who also started as an intern for our radio station. He's a manager, a big, high ranking manager for iHeart. And his name is Kevin LeGret. And he and Hopi, it's so funny to think that they were interns at the same time and are now have just achieved high level of success in radio. And we were fortunate enough to work with them as interns. It's just so crazy. I did. And it's, again, people that get to work around Weeze, you think of people like Kevin Legret. You think of people like Opie, like myself, like Stephanie Miller, like Dave Coombs, like and so many different people who worked around him and just became great successes. Because when you just work around somebody who's as talented as Weeze and who goes through life the way he does, and Weeze just is, you just realize, man, if I can adopt just some of what this guy has, I should be good. And it turned out so good for so many people.
Now, with everybody that was on Weeze's show, Greg Opie Hughes, the guy from iHeartMedia, did you, and the other people that you named as well, did you notice that you saw in them that they were going to be big names? And did you feel that about yourself as well during that era?
I hoped I did. You know, I think for myself, I had to get the hell out of my own way. I was very bitter, very upset in life, very jealous, and those are the things that were holding me back from any natural ability that I had. And I did have natural ability. A lot of people pulled me aside and thought I was talented, but I just had to get out of my own way. I was my worst enemy. You could tell Opie was so much fun. He had such a great attitude. It was like, no matter what was going on, and that was something I admired in Opie, was just, boy, this guy is just, he's just always ready to win, always ready to go, and really fun sense of humor. And there would be great conversations. And when you'd have these conversations with Opie, you realize, wow, this guy's got a great mind. Like you could tell he was an orchestrator. And, anybody that knows, the history of that show, I mean, Opie really put so many great personalities together on his show. And you could tell that early on. And Kevin was just a guy that you just knew was going to be a leader. I mean, even as an intern, he comes in with these leadership qualities, a college kid, coming into this room of gigantic personalities, because at the time it was a big, big rock station and so many great personalities, including Weeze in our show. And Kevin came in and just, you could tell, it's like, this dude's a born leader. So yeah, you could see it, Hoppy. You really, really could.
What's the transition been like to KZOK in the first 2 months so far?
Yeah, the transition has been really good. Sarah, who worked with Danny Bonaducci for the longest time, I always admired her, and we both have the same agent. So I used to call my agent from time to time and say, hey, any chance at all I could get you to tell Sarah to leave that Bonaducci kid and come, maybe we could do something. I always joked around with him about that, and he goes, no way, she's with Danny forever. And I mean, as it turned out, that's exactly what happened. She was right with him until his retirement. But I liked her. I always thought, man, she is so good. And she's so good that like going over there and working with her, it was just like, we didn't need any time at all to get going. It was instant chemistry. Maybe it helps that we're both from Boston originally, but the chemistry was there. She's a professional. She's a hard worker, and just great sense of humor. And we get along great. And so that has really helped. The station is much different than where I came from. So I'm the one that really, I had to make some adjustments on the kind of show that I would do and the kind of character that I'm putting on the radio. Lots more women listening, an older audience. And so what I used to do at the old place just isn't going to fly anymore. And so Sarah was really instrumental in helping me learn about the audience. Also, our program director, Chris Sargent, he's been really good at educating me about that. And it's been smooth. It's been Hoppy. It's probably the smoothest transition I have ever had. And I just chalk that up to, I think, iHeart Seattle has some great people there. And Sarah is just an amazing talent.
Well, I think also you two are the definitions of veterans. I believe Sarah worked at KZOK in New York City, so she has a rock and roll background, and you have a rock and roll background. So I think that's what really helps, is that like when you listen to Sarah, she knows she's good. Because sometimes I feel like and this doesn't even just go with female talent, but you listen to people that have been doing it a while and they sound burnt out, and then they sound unconfident in themselves. When you listen to Sarah, for example, on the very first day, she was explaining a segment to you and she sounded confident and she was commanding the room. She wasn't like catering to you. She's like, this is how we do it here. And I really like that.
Yeah, and she has a great amount of confidence, and it's also mixed with a great amount of collaboration. I think that's one of the impressive things about Sarah. There are people that, and I work with them, who knows, I might have even been one of them, where it's like, this is how we do things, and therefore we're going to do it this way, and I don't want to hear anything from you. And Sarah is, hey, this is how we do things, but what do you think kind of attitude. And and a lot of things we've just done on the fly. It's really fascinating. And I don't know if management gets this. Management's like, you guys ought to go in a room and really practice. And Sarah and I laughed and said, do you think one show in a room is going to help us? It's like, it's just going to be an evolving thing. And yet at the same time, we are so good that, I'll say she's really good actually I'm pretty good too. And we're so good that we just know timing, and it's like so wonderful to work with somebody who's a professional. And our business really needs to look for that. You got to either look for performers or train people to be performers. Sarah, she's a great performer. And I think also she benefited working with Danny, Danny has a great background in performance. And it's just been, for me, it's been so easy. I wasn't sure how it was going to be. I didn't think it was going to be too difficult, but I didn't realize how easy it would be. Normally, I think it takes 2 years to get used to somebody and, get that chemistry going. And it feels like Sarah and I have been working together for like 5 years at least. And that's all due to her, man. She's just, and also when things are chaotic, Sarah's just, she can run a board. She can plan a show. She's just an MVP caliber talent that I am so fortunate that I get to share a studio with.
How often when you're on air, do you want to say like a phrase from your old job or say the name of your old job?
It's funny. It's only when we do the Listeners on the Loose segment, because I'm so used to saying the old phone number. So far, I haven't had, the way the show is designed, it's not the same way how we get in and get out of breaks. Also, Sarah and I share quarterbacking duties, so I'm not always opening every break. So I haven't had that issue because it's been so disrupted that it doesn't even remind me of how I used to do it at the old place. It's only Listeners on the Loose, so I'll just say Listeners on the Loose, then immediately I'll want to throw out the old number and realize, oh wait, that's not the number we use anymore. So it's not been as bad as I thought it would be in order and to speak of that, to make any mistakes and go, oh yeah, it's the old place, which I'm very surprised because I thought for sure I'd be doing that a lot more.
How often do you talk to Miggs after leaving the show? Have you spoken to him?
Here's the thing. It's funny. It's really not an indictment of anybody. I don't talk to anybody who's not on my show at all. I wouldn't be surprised if I don't talk to Steve until maybe Morning Show Boot Camp, just because he and I know his schedule, I know my schedule, and if we hardly saw each other. Outside of the radio station because, he's trying to have a life. I'm trying to have a life. You want your weekends with your family. So, yeah, I don't know if I'll ever talk with him outside of that. But then again, I haven't talked to anybody on the show except my daughter because I live with my daughter and she is on that show. But that's just how it is. I never talked much with Bob Rivers, even though we lived in Seattle. When we were both on air working, we hardly ever talked to each other. It's just a bizarre thing. There's just so much going on. Like there's a lot of things to do after the show. And then by the time I get home, I'm like, hey man, I just want to chill. And then my weekends, it's usually for myself, my family, that kind of thing. But I think I heard that they are going to boot camp. I plan on going to boot camp this year. So it'll be fun to have a reunion with everybody. Because it was a great team over there. Those folks were really nice. It was a special place all these years, and Steve was fantastic all those years. So it'll be good to see where we both are as we're on our new adventures. And I'm not, a lot of people think that we'd be in competition with each other, but I have to say that now that I've sort of seen the playing field of what my show is now and the audience that I have now, I think we're in competition with actually other Seattle stations and maybe not so much with my old place. I could be wrong about that, but it just feels like if I were other radio stations in town, I'd be looking at Sarah and I as competition, not so much just, the old place thinking that we're competition.
For me, there's a few people from my old jobs that I keep in touch with, but I feel like because radio is such a talking job, when I'm done with the job, I don't feel like talking to anybody. I just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I wanted to be ready for this interview, so I had some vacation time, and I used it this afternoon to decompress from work so I would be ready to do this interview. Because I was going to maybe do it at work, but I figured out how to do it because I was having problems with my board. So what I'm saying is, it's a lot, man, when you're just either listening to talking all day or you're talking all day. I feel like there's times I want to reach out to people, but I don't feel like talking.
Yeah, and I think that's a real thing, Hoppy. I don't think it's anything but that. And a lot of listeners think you guys must hang out and have fun all the time, and it's just the same thing. Like with Sarah, Sarah's married. She's going to spend this long weekend hanging out with her husband, and we have this other guy in the show, Waldo, and he's going to go live his life, and we probably won't say a word to each other. Maybe there'll be some texting going on about stuff that we might want to talk about when we're back on Tuesday, but pretty much we all kind of go our separate ways. And I had never even met Sarah once. She's been in this town for, over a decade, and I have never met her once. And I've been a big fan of hers. It just doesn't happen. I'm actually trying to get together with Brooke Fox from Brooke and Jeffrey here in Seattle, because she was really kind on my last days at the other joint. And she reached out and just said, you know what, you've had a great career. It's been an honor to be in the business with you. And I'm like, man, we got to get together, Brooke, because I've never met her. And it's like we've been competing for so long in the same town. And it's just how it's like you said, Hoppy. Sometimes it's just hard to do. But I really, I do my best. If somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, we should get together, I'm like, okay, let me make a plan. Let's get that done. But you're right. But some people just go, you know what? I don't want to talk. I'm done. I'm chilled. Don't take it personally. This is just how I am.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you're getting up early in the morning or even at like 8 a.m., like you're getting up early and then you have to go to a job that has talking. It's not that radio's hard, but it's definitely, at least for me, because you're a big proponent on mental health and I am as well. It can be kind of taxing on your mental health to be in radio and talk all day.
Yeah, this business is very taxing on your mental health. And luckily for me, my therapist was a military therapist before he went into private practice. So he worked with the military forces, and his specialty was PTSD. And he did some research and found out that a lot of like business executives, tech executives, he found out how much PTSD they had. And of course they were like, how can we have PTSD? We never served. And he said the same thing to me. And he did research into radio for me. And he said, wow, I have found out that your business, when you're doing your show, even if everything is perfect, everything's going perfect, you've got the amount of people you want in there, and the show goes over well, and management's treating you great, and there's no issues. Even at that point, you still have a stress level akin to that of an air traffic controller. And last year from Kennedy, who was on the mental health panel at boot camp, also she brought some research to the table talking about how we're shift workers, and that when you work a shift that's not the normal 9 to 5, that has a dramatic mental health impact on you. So those two things are things that our business doesn't know. It feels sometimes like it's the NFL, the way they looked at CTE and concussions, and then finally they had to get their act together and pull their heads out of their butts and do a better job at protecting the players. I think we have that same thing going on with radio executives, where they just kind of don't want to know the mental health ramifications of how they treat people and how the business treats people. They just don't want to see it, but they're going to have to see it sooner or later, because it's a fact. It's true. It's big. Mental health is severely impacted by our industry, and we need to be better stewards of the people in that industry.
I think the other problem is mental health is something that I feel like people use for like hashtags in May when it's National Mental Health Month, and then in September for another month. I forget. Like at one of my old jobs, they were big on those for like producing shows on the weekend about mental health, but then they treated everybody like crap. So it kind of didn't make any sense, Like I feel like people talk the talk about mental health, but a lot of times their actions towards other people say otherwise.
Yeah, when you're in a money-making business, which is pretty much America, they're going to do whatever they're going to do to make money, including, nowadays they know that, well, let's just take a look at your generation. They know millennials and they know Zoomers what's big to your generations is that companies are doing something to give back. They don't care about the product as much. They don't care. What they care about is, hey, what are you doing for like the world? And so now companies are realizing in order for them to make money, they have to look good to that particular generation. So that's why you're seeing people go, oh yeah, we're all about this, we're all about that. And you're like, are you really? Or are you just trying to get the millennials and Zoomers money? I like it when it's a combo platter, when in fact, yes, you're trying to make money and you actually are walking the walk. I think it can be done. I think you can make money and still be good to people. Wall Street is probably going to have to make some adjustments. And I don't know if that'll ever happen, but at least individually you can. I think your generation and Zoomers are just changing the way the workplace is. And the workplace, at least in radio, is so much different than when I started, and for the better.
What are some things that you have seen improve that have made the workplace better in radio since beginning?
Well, you know what? I'm no longer dodging carts and things being thrown at me. I'm no longer being verbally abused by management.
The worst.
It was bad. There was a lot of screaming, yelling, lots of drug use, which I think is down, or at least if there's drug use going on, it's much more covert and surely not happening inside the offices like they used to be. It was a lot less sexism and it was the wild, wild west sometimes. And it was not cool. You know, for a person like myself, where I wasn't that bro culture, I wasn't that locker room guy, you know, I'm not about the golf course and all that. It was tough to try to actually be successful in those days. You were either part of the clique or you weren't. And I never was. I was always on the outside. And now I believe it's changed, where it's a lot more inclusive and everybody at least is starting to get a better chance. It's not perfect, that's for sure, and there's still a lot of people that are feeling like they're not treated well in the workplace. But I do believe it's a lot better than when I started. My gosh, it's especially for women, especially for people of color, it's a lot better.
I love when people rip into the word woke when they don't have any idea what the meaning is. Like, obviously, woke culture can sometimes go over the top, but I've always said the overall meaning of being woke is supposed to be like treating women right, treating other ethnicities right, treating people on the LGBTQ plus community right. Like, I've always said people that treat people like that badly hate themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, when you take a look at the power, like who has power and who doesn't, I think it's interesting that, because I think that if you really do your therapy, you realize you don't need power. You don't need all this stuff to be happy, to be whole, to sort of, be in the moment. And what I'm seeing with people when they have these power struggles, when folks are saying, hey, we would like a chance to be represented and we would like a share of the power, I wonder if the folks that are in power are so afraid to lose power because they know how abusive they have been with that power, that if somebody else got in power, they may be afraid they'll be abused back, which I don't believe would be true. I think that actually marginalized groups, if they were given more power, would be a lot kinder than the people they're trying to get the power from. And the people that they're trying to get the power from are very afraid that they're going to be abused as much as they have been abusive. That's sort of my take on it all.
I've noticed just in general, not even just radio, but in general, if someone treats others badly, most of the time they were treated badly coming up in some fashion of anything. Hurt people, baby. You're right. I know I did. I know that in my worst days, that's exactly what the case was for me, Hoppy. And then I really had to get my act together and learn there was a better way to live. Have you been able to maybe speak out to some of the people that you hurt, and have you been able to say sorry?
Yeah, some of the people, yes. And I have this practice that I do, and I don't know, if it's that impactful, but sometimes if I hear somebody say they've gone through a really bad time, I will apologize to them. And they'll look at me and go, why are you apologizing? I said, because what you went through, I did to somebody. And that person I did it to, I don't know where they are. I don't know if I'll ever see them again. I'll never get to say I'm sorry. So to me, the next best thing is if I can't say I'm sorry to them, let me say I'm sorry to you because you haven't got an apology from the person that was your perpetrator. And like try to balance it out that way and be empathetic to somebody who's going through a hard time that I know I've put someone else through. But I have, Hoppy, if somebody has the opportunity or wants the opportunity for me to be contrite and accountable, I'm ready to be there, because that's where healing starts. I mean, a lot of times that's all it takes is for someone to go, hey, man, you did me wrong. And for you to sit there and go, you're right. And then give an unmitigated apology, which is, man, I'll tell you something. If we as human beings could learn the skill of giving unmitigated apologies, which that means is you apologize and say nothing else, as opposed to, hey, I'm really sorry, Hoppy, but you know what, really, if you didn't come over here and do what you did, and if you were a little earlier, like all of a sudden my apology turns into, it's your fault that I have to apologize.
Yeah.
That's a mitigated apology, and it sucks. It never works. Nobody ever gets any benefit from it. But the unmitigated apology, you just go, dude, I'm sorry. And that's it. It's amazing how healing it is for both sides. But I know for me, it was, and sometimes still is, the hardest thing to do is to apologize and just shut up after that.
Man, I'm thinking of moments that I've had unmitigated apologies given to me right now by you bringing that up. It's weird.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing because then all of a sudden, no matter how much anger you have, you get to see, okay, am I the one fueling this anger, or can I forgive, and can I be, and then it's like if someone is still screaming at you, even though you've apologized multiple times, at that point, it's like, okay, they've got the issue, because, you did what you did. There's not much else you can do about it, but say, I'm really sorry, and I'll do my best for that not to happen again. And that's all you can do, especially if you were a hurt person and thought that what you were doing was the right thing to do for you at that time. And then upon further review, you go, oh, yeah, man, I could have been better in that circumstance. Sure, I'm sorry. If a person doesn't take that unmitigated apology, then they have some more bitter issues, and they have to work on that. I remember Bob Rivers brokered an apology between myself and this other radio personality. He was like, look, and Bob was like the ambassador. He loved everybody. And so he was like, I'm going to bring you two guys to the table, and you, BJ, you got to make it happen. And I'm like, all right. I go, well, he did some crappy things. I did some crappy things. So I said, you know what? I'm going to be the bigger man. I'm going to start it off. And I sat at the table and I said, hey, man, I am so sorry. I did A, B, and C, and that was really bad. I'm sorry. Meanwhile, the dude goes, yeah, okay, thanks. And never says anything. And then I look at Bob and I go, it's funny. I go, he's not going to at least apologize for the crap he did to me. That's it. It's over. And I just thought, well, all right, I guess that he just has stuff, because, if you can't apologize and at least acknowledge that you've hurt somebody, I guess at the end of the day, who's really the one to be hurt? They're still living with all that, because that's still in his brain, or even if he's trying to bury it, it's still in his brain. And that's what I like. I'm going to get it all out. And so that's not living in my brain rent free. I don't want that there, because it's just going to make me miserable. So I'll try to be as accountable and apologetic as I can be.
I notice that those things that live rent free in your brain, like I don't really have any true regrets. And I've said sorry to the people I've needed to say sorry to, so I can go to bed well. But I notice all the flashbacks during the day, man, when I'm driving in traffic, when I'm at work, when I'm talking to you right now, I don't think about it. But when I'm laying in bed by myself, or even if I'm laying next to somebody and I'm with my cat and I'm about to go to bed, dude, I've had this thing recently where I've been like seeing my life flash before my eyes, and I'm thinking about memories from 7 years ago. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but it's been like hitting me at night when I'm about to go to bed.
Yeah, well, dude, those are, those are traumatic flashes that pop in, especially if you're not having pleasant moments. I mean, I listened to, your interview with Drew Lane, which was fantastic, by the way. And boy, what an amazing success he's been in his career and
Legend.
Still is. And you were talking about like what happened between you and Mike Calta, and how, your ex-girlfriend was on the air, and they sort of talking about your life. And, I mean, I have a good relationship with Mike Calta. I mean, we we'll go back and forth a couple of times on social media. He has a lot of respect for me. I got a lot of respect for him. We've been on panels together. And I would say for me, I wouldn't have done that. I don't know what led to all of that, but I think, man, this is a guy's life, and you're bringing and this is like real people, real lives. And I used to do stuff like that. So that's why I can't say it was wrong for that to be done. I just know today I wouldn't do it because I know the pain I felt of having to realize the damage I caused by doing the kind of radio that I did. And I did that kind of radio. So I'm surely not going to judge anybody for it. I just know where I sit today. When I heard you tell that story, I felt so horrible because it reminded me of all the times that I did similar radio, and I would justify it by saying, this is what you got to do to get ratings. And I can sit here and go, that might have been slightly true, but that wasn't completely true. There were other reasons I was, it's a tough thing, man.
I just had to speak out because people can listen to it if they go on my podcast channel or on YouTube, because I don't want to keep.
Listen to it, people. It's good. It's good.
I just don't want to become like John Melendez and other guys like that, where they keep talking about Stern or they keep talking about Rover and all these people that like former co-workers will talk about the shows for clicks. Like, that's the one and only time I'm going to talk about Calta. But it's like, bro, at some point I had to get my side out, because when I'm still talked about for 2 years and people are coming up to me and tweeting at me and they don't know how things really went down, that's when, like, I don't like talking about other people, because I was made fun of growing up and I try to be very low key as possible. But sometimes, dude, when the opportunity is there and you keep getting brought up on air, you have to speak out, because then you look like a pussy and a bitch if you don't. And I'm not trying to sound like toxic and like manly, but at times, bro, like, you gotta speak out when your reputation, because you can't like sue somebody, because like the radio guys in this town that have gone through lawsuits over words, that makes you look like you can't handle it. You got to defend yourself and speak up, and then not do it again. You know what I'm saying? Like, not do it to others and not keep talking about it, because then you're just doing it for clout. Like, if I were to keep talking about Calta over and over, then at some point it's like, well, Hoppy, you got to move on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and look, you feel that in your own body, Hoppy, just as human beings. I sure as heck am not going to tell anybody how they need to address things in their life, especially in our business, because, you saw me in 2008, you saw those vlogs. There's a lot of stuff that happened on my show that people don't know what really went down. And I, like you, I used to get pissed because listeners would come up to me and complain about certain things. And I'd be like, look, dude, and in my mind, I'm like, they have no idea what's going on. I look like the bad guy here, when in reality, that is so not true. And I really couldn't say anything because, companies, when things happen, companies will go, look, you work for us and we're telling you not to mention anything about it. And I go, yeah, but I'm getting my ass kicked. I'm the one taking all the arrows here. And, because there's no information, I look bad. So I get it. Hoppy. You just sometimes got to go out there and say, hey, this is what happened. And I'm tired of people coming at me with untruth. And I will say this as well. I'm just going to throw it out there. And this is a general statement. I'm just going to make this general statement, and maybe this is going to piss off a lot of other broadcasters, but I don't care, because I just feel like it's 2024. If you're doing the kind of radio where you got to make fun of somebody, especially somebody who used to work with you and they're not there anymore and they're struggling and just trying to get a job in a business that could use people that want to be in the business, if you're just like using material about them, making fun of them, I would say, is that the best you got? Then you're a bad broadcaster. You're really bad at your job if making fun of former employees is the only way that you can entertain. And if your listeners are entertained by that, then you have really low-lying fruit, uneducated, and frankly, not listeners that I want. I wouldn't want those listeners. I mean, to me, I would just think those listeners deserve a better form of entertainment, and I'll stand by that. And look, I used to be that guy. And I was schooled by people, thank God, mentors got to me and said, are you going to be a low-level broadcaster all your life, BJ? Are you going to find the top of your game and then come from that place every time you open that microphone? And that's what I was challenged to do that. And it does surprise me, all these people that are still doing that kind of radio, like Hoppy, my God. It's just like, I don't know what you're doing now. It's like, move on, America. It's like, all right, well, the Hoppy's doing that and whatever, it's done. But if people are still talking about you years later, especially from, a guy that you were on with maybe 10 years ago, or a guy you were on with 3 years ago. Yeah. That to me is just lame. It's just lame. And I would say that to anybody, my best friends in the business or people I don't know, I would say, you can do better radio than that. Sorry, you can. And if you can't do better radio than that, maybe you should resign and let somebody take the job that can. But unfortunately, our business rewards the wrong thing a lot of times when it comes to broadcasting. I'm always dumbfounded by the people that have jobs in this industry. And then I'm dumbfounded by the people that don't have jobs in this industry. And usually I'm a bull in the china shop when I'm at my own place. And I think even iHeart Seattle is probably going like, wow, all right, well, why did we hire this guy? He's kind of just giving us a hard time about things. And it's because, I'm passionate that I want the best people working for us, and I'm not going to tolerate culture that isn't a winning culture. And I think the kind of culture that would make you feel the way you feel, Hoppy, that you'd have to come out and give a declaration of your side of a story because the culture of the place that's broadcasting is just putting you down. I just think that's ridiculous. I wouldn't tolerate it. I wouldn't let anybody on my show be like that. That kind of bullying culture is BS. And it's radio from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and it's lame. And, it's also lame for other forms of entertainment that's not radio. I mean, we just can't do that. If we're going to be effective, we just can't do that. And it's about time people stand up in the business and say something so that the business can thrive.
Now, in Tampa Bay, obviously, with Bubba, Mike Calta, MJ, Drew Garabo, all that radio war thing has always been like the big thing in Tampa Bay. Everybody thinks about the radio wars. Chicago had it with Mancow and Steve Dahl. Howard had it with everybody he went up against in different markets. Did Seattle ever have, did you ever take part in a radio war?
It's interesting. Seattle's a very, very unique place. It's very collaborative. And when you think about the origin of the Seattle sound, also known as grunge, they all work together. So Seattle just wouldn't tolerate that kind of behavior. Sure, people try to do some different things and all that, but I know that when I got to town and I was as edgy and as shocky as you could be, but still for Seattle, they don't like you being cruel and mean to people. They're big on courtesy in this town. So the radio wars thing that you're talking about just doesn't cut it. And I'll tell you, the best example I have of that is that Bubba, because again, I don't know, Bubba is Bubba. I know he's had great success and all that, but that is
the best way to describe Bubba. Bubba is Bubba.
Yeah. He's not what I believe. He's not what I would ever want to be in radio. And I know he's had great success. So, I mean, but I honestly just, whatever he has on his resume that got him there, I'm so happy it's not on mine. And the thing that Bubba tried to do is Bubba tried to come after me. It was when I first started at KISW, when I took over in 2006 for Howard Stern, Bubba started coming at me, and we had a thing. We had a group of people. We had a fan club called the H-Hole Army. And basically, I had a thing that I used to call people honest holes, and that's what H-Hole stood for. And then we created this H-Hole Army, which, was basically a fan club. And then Bubba just started coming at me like, oh, you're ripping me up. I've got the Bubba Army. You've got the H. And so, but he did it in such a Bubba way. And I'm just like a pragmatist, and I'm also very realistic, and I'm very honest. And so if somebody called me up and said, hey, I'll tell you what, Bubba says you're a thief, and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I immediately just said, the problem with Bubba is that he doesn't think I'm going to be completely honest and authentic because he can't be honest and authentic, just like a lot of radio talent who are shock jock a-holes, just like Howard Stern, who eventually had to be honest and authentic. I mean, Howard has recreated his life, but Howard wasn't always honest and authentic. And he's admitted that, and he's had to apologize to a lot of people because of the fact that he kind of wasn't as honest and authentic as he is today. And so I just basically answered Bubba, said, geez, Bubba, I didn't steal that bit from you. I stole that bit from Kiss, like the Kiss Army. Oh, wait a minute. They stole that bit from Arnold Palmer, the golfer, where he had Arnie's Army. And then I just said, how ridiculous is this Floridian idiot to think that I wouldn't say this? It's like, honestly, it's like, this is his show. This is why they pay him all that money, so he can be a moron and basically try to go after some guy in Seattle over a bit that he stole and I stole together. It's BJ. Like, that's not our bit. That was neither one of our bits.
No.
And so that, that's why I look at that kind of radio and I go, your generation and Zoomers want authenticity. So that kind of radio is so stupid. It's just so stupid. And frankly, I got no time for it anymore. I just don't. So again, Bubba's Bubba, and, congratulations to whatever the hell he's doing. And, great.
Now, I want to ask you. I want to ask you now, when I've ever responded to Shane Rover French or Mike Cowhead Calta, whenever I tell them the true side, I literally don't hear anything back. Did you hear something back from Bubba when you responded, or did he kind of not respond?
No, he's not going to respond because, Bubba is not somebody that can – he's just not going to be able to do that. I mean, I give Bubba credit. He knows what his strengths are. Here's what you never do in the world of battle and the world of debate is you never go to somebody's home field and fight them. And the thing is that I immediately established what my home field was, which is, dude, I'm not going to lie about anything. What do you want to know? I'll tell you exactly where I got this bit, where I got that bit. I made great friends with Kevin, with Bean from the Kevin and Bean show, because it used to be people would play bits and they'd steal them from other stations and they never give them credit. I used to take this stuff and I go on the air and go, hey, there's a great radio show down in California. And these guys do great bits and I'm going to play it. I mean, I don't have permission, but I don't care. I'm going to give them credit and hopefully they're happy about that. And Bean and I became friends because I didn't know he lived in Washington State. So he used to do his show from Washington State. So he was near me and he's like, hey, man, I just want to say, why are you playing my bits? And he called me up that one time and then I was like, I go, hey, man, I'm giving you credit. You're lucky I'm playing. I'm not getting paid to play it. And he started laughing. He goes, no, dude, you're the only person I've ever heard in the history of this business where you play a bit and give credit to the original show that you got it from. He says, I love you. Let's get together for lunch. And Bubba knows that about me. If anybody is that I am not, because that's the Wheeze school. The Wheeze school is be honest and tell the truth. Who cares? And Bubba's just not going to do that. He's not going to fight in that arena because he can't win that battle. Because he doesn't know what I'm going to say. He doesn't know what I'm going to be honest about. He also doesn't know what I know about him that isn't necessarily authentic. And he knows I'm going to spill all the beans about myself, which means why wouldn't I spill all the beans about him? And that just a lot of these fake radio guys are just not going to fight that battle. So I knew I'd never hear from him again. But he stopped bothering me. He realized, okay, this guy, we can't get him to fight the way we want to fight. And finally he realized, oh, and by the way, the guys in Seattle and in Florida, why am I wasting my dumb time even talking about this guy? I don't even know. And eventually he stopped.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where shock jocks are not real. They're not authentic. So they're not going to have an authentic argument with you. Because I noticed they just will say, and this goes with anybody. This goes with Mancow, Rover, Calta, Bubba, Stern back in the day, Opie and Anthony. I'm trying to think of other names, but whatever. Like, whenever the person would respond, you just don't hear back and they move on. Like, think about Artie Lang. He would keep attacking Howard 10 years ago, and Howard never responded because they don't want to bring to light what they're doing, because then it makes them look bad. You know what I'm saying? They sort of pretend like they're all big and tough and mighty when they have the microphone in their face, but then when the other people have a chance to respond, usually they move on to the next person, because then they don't want to get into an argument with that person, because they know deep down, like, nothing's better, BJ, than when you're speaking out, like for me personally, speaking out about somebody and knowing the truth and knowing that I have no skeletons to hide, because I've been pretty honest about my life on the radio for 10 years. And that's the best feeling ever, is like throwing a bomb and knowing I don't do tax evasion. I don't cheat on my exes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have nothing to hide. So I personally don't give a fuck what others say. Because I know if someone says something really bad about me, I'll go, that's not true. Because I know I have no skeletons in the closet.
Yeah, and that's a nice way to live. Wheeze was the one that taught us that. I learned that a long time ago from Wheeze, because some people would ask him. He'd have all sorts of people on the show. He would give me plenty of time to be funny. Comedians would come in and be funny. And eventually a couple of radio guys asked him, say, hey, Wheeze, are you afraid that if all these people are, shining on the microphone and doing really well, that the company will come up to you and, and you won't get the credit? And Wheeze was so funny. He's like, bruh, I'll tell you when they get the credit, when the bonus comes out. I'll let any MFer come in here and be funny. I'm the one that gets paid. And I learned that from him. He's like, he just was so honest and real about the fact that he didn't care who was funny. He didn't care whatever. He knew at the end of the day that, he gets paid no matter who's funny on his show. And he was real. He wasn't going to get caught in an argument where someone was going to be fake and everything, because he would never be fake. And it was so powerful and so freeing to know that you can be that kind of person. If you're 100% real and authentic, at least with how you treat people, how you are, Hoppy, you're going to be in great shape if somebody comes at you.
Well, that quote, I think you either said it to me before or on a panel, and I've actually quoted that to other people about Weeze getting the bonus check, about not caring who talks. And I try to bring that appeal when I have my co-hosts Josh and DJ Pez on the show. Is in the past, when I had other co-hosts, when I do my talk show online, I would talk over them because I was insecure about the name of my show being Hoppe Hour and people outshining me. But now, if my co-host has to talk for 2 minutes in a row, I take a hit of my vape pen, I drink a little wine, and I realize that if you really do want a successful show, you got to kind of not be afraid of others shining.
Well, yeah, and look, I know a lot of history went down and a lot of bad blood, and I'm friends with Opie and I'm friends with Jim Norton. I didn't really know Anthony very well. But the Opie was that. I mean, the Opie and Anthony show, man. I mean, Anthony, Jim Norton, and some of the other people, they really shined on that show. And Opie let that happen. Again, he was a brilliant mind where he could put some people together like that. And that is, and I don't know if he learned that from Weeze. I feel like he did, man, because that's how Weeze was. Weeze had no problem letting people shine on his show. And I saw that happen with Opie a lot, where he, it's hard to believe you get a guy like Anthony, who's so damn talented. And my brain would go, how the heck would Jim Norton be able to shine in that situation? And especially if there's a guy Opie, it's like, what, I'm going to bring a third guy on that's going to be amazing? And that's exactly what he did. And it worked for so long. I mean, it's sad what everything devolved into. But boy, when they were at the top of their game, the three of them, man, I mean, you couldn't do any better. And a lot of it has to do, I think, with Opie being the orchestrator, allowing those two to be themselves and be great. And, Jim Norton is a massive professional. That guy can work with anybody. That's the other thing I think that gets lost, which I want to give Jimmy a lot of love. Jimmy was great on that show. He was biting. He was acerbic. I mean, you didn't want to go up against Jimmy on that show. To the point where, I would sometimes wonder when I first got Jimmy as a guest on my show, I thought, oh, my God, our show's got to be lame compared to what he is. How's Jimmy going to be? And Jimmy fit perfectly. He adjusted and he just became that same guy, but he was so good to us and he was so respectful to us. Jimmy's got to be one of the most, I think, professional broadcasters I've ever worked with. Not to mention, of course, a terrific stand-up comedian and a great, great guy and a student of the game. I've never seen anybody work harder and prepare harder than Jim Norton. It's a pleasure when you get to work with people like that and see people like that, and it's inspiring.
So there's a clip online. There's like 10 clips. This is back when YouTube would let you post just up to 10 minutes. And there's a whole morning show of when Jim Norton sat in and was the co-host of your old morning show about 15 years ago. What was that morning like?
Oh man, it's a lot of fun. I don't know if that was the Antisocial tour. You take a look at the bill. Jim was on that tour, and Bill Burr was on that tour, and there's a couple of other strong dudes that I can't. I'm blanking because I'm old, but you recognize their comedian names, and I'm so sorry that I can't remember them. But it was four amazing comics, and Jim was there, and I think at one point, he got them all to come on the show with us at one point, and we were able to be the station of record and basically present that show. Those were some great times, and it's reminiscent. That kind of show, Hoppy, was reminiscent of when I worked with Weeze back in the days when the great Sam Kinison was doing comedy while he was still alive. And to me, still the greatest week I've ever experienced in radio. Sam Kinison was as big as any comic you could ever think of at the time. And Sam, because Weeze was loyal to Sam before anybody really knew who Sam was, Weeze had put him on the show. Sam said, Weeze, whenever I come to town or I'm in the area, I will do a week on your show. So Sam would have a show in Buffalo. Sam would have a show in Syracuse. Sam would have a show in Rochester. And they're all, if anybody knows the area, like multiple hours apart. Sam would go do his show in Buffalo, then drive back to Rochester, do a live show with Weeze. Then he would drive and do his show to Syracuse, drive back from Syracuse, do another live show with Weeze. He'd do these shows, and then he would finally do his Rochester appearance at the concert. And it was all because he thought Weeze was a great guy and he wanted to reward him. And the week of radio that we did with Sam Kinison, Sam came in and co-hosted every day for a week. And it was amazing. And doing that show with Jim back then, when you said, reminded me of that. Because, you know, Jim is an amazing talent. To have him in studio for a whole show was just a gift.
Do you think you would ever be able to bring in comics to your current morning show?
You know, that depends. Radio's got a real, if it's somebody who is a household name, or if Jim was coming to town, you know, I think out of friendship, I would say, yeah, sure, you can come on. But, you know, right now, I don't know, you know, guests on radio just don't seem to be what the program directors are liking. And they have their studies and their research and PPM. And I don't fight any of that because I'm not a scientist and I'm not steeped in it. So I'm going to let the company tell me what they've learned because they put a lot of people into it and they're smart. And iHeart is the best company, you know, in radio. So it's like, if they don't know, then nobody knows. And so right now we don't have a lot of guests. We just really don't. And whether now it could be also that we're a new show, so we really just want to focus on us getting our footing and us learning how to do a show together. That could be a reason why maybe, you know, the programming department says, hey, let's just relax on the guests. But, you know, it depends. You know how things change, Hoppy. Things go back and forth. But a lot of people love comics and they swear by them. And so they'll have them on regularly. And me, I'm ambivalent. I'll go either way. It really... You know, when I worked with Weeze, sometimes we had comics that were just like traveling comics back in the height of the 80s when comedy was huge, and they weren't good. And I remember Weeze and I just looking at each other going, why do we have these people on? But we had a deal with the comedy club, so we had to always have somebody in every week. And yeah, you got good guys, the ones that were really professionally came to town, but you got a lot of comics that weren't good, or they weren't good on the radio. And there would be battles like, why do you want me to do my material? And I go, I don't know, maybe because you want to sell some tickets. Well, you're going to sit here and not be entertaining. And then who the hell's going to want to see your show? I never understood the comics that didn't understand that if you're not entertaining, no one's going to want to go see you. And, you know, and you're ruining our show at the same time. And boy, there was just so many of those guys that were like that. And it frustrated the heck out of me. And, you know, not everybody thinks they can be on Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's the other thing. It's like, what, you think you can just be an improv star? It takes a lot to learn how to be improvisationally entertaining. Not everybody knows how to do that. And like, oh, yeah, we can do it. No, actually you can't. You're not doing it at all. You're kind of sucking. And that always frustrated me when comics would not understand that we know our business. Just, you know, you really should listen to us. And it goes back and forth. It really, really does. And so that's why for me, you know, I mean, if it's somebody that I know, I've had great experience with comics, but I've also had some not so great experience with comics. And so, you know, I guess it just depends on who it is.
Growing up, man, I loved Opie and Anthony, and I liked Ron and Fez right after Opie and Anthony. And they would have
oh, yeah, Ron and Fez, great show.
Yeah, they would have comics on all the time. And I thought comedians were the greatest thing ever about 15 years ago. And I met probably every comic that goes to a comedy club that doesn't sell out like a tour, like the ones that just go to normal comedy clubs. I met all of them. And it kind of ruins it a little bit when they're douchebags. Like, not all of them, but it's that saying, BJ, don't meet your heroes.
Yeah, you know, and I think we got to give credit to Opie and Anthony at the time because, you know, a lot of times some of those comics that they had in were not that great. And some of them have come through my town. And that's why Opie and Anthony and Jimmy, they're really good at making anybody great. Like, they will make anybody sound good even if they suck. They'll find a way to make it entertaining. And I think that's something that, you know, it's interesting where people go, wow, I love every comic that's on their show, not realizing that sometimes the comic is not that good. But Opie, Anthony, and Jimmy were so good that pretty much you could put on somebody that was a mime and they would make a mime good because that's how entertaining and how great that show was. And they made a lot of people look better than maybe they really were.
Now, it's been an hour. I can't believe it. Talking to you, man, there'd be times we'd be doing the boot camp. Damn. And we'd be out. There was that one time. What was that woman's name? She was around my age. She worked in Houston. It was me, you, Dwyer, and then
was it Kristen? Was it Crystal? Yes. Yes. Christiana. Gosh, she's going to hate me for forgetting her name, but I'm old and forget everybody's name. Yes, I think it was her. I can see her face.
Yeah.
So I think I know who you're talking about.
She worked with Rula and Ryan, right? Remember that?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly. I love her. She's awesome. Yeah. Why am I blanking on her name? Oh man, she spells her name differently.
It's
and
like
that's why
Krystina, Renee or something.
Maybe it is Christina. Maybe that's just her name is Christina, but she spells it that way. But yeah she's fantastic. I remember. I do remember that, even though it's funny because that picture you did post of us, of you and me, you look like, but I look like I've had a couple of beverages, which is pretty much my MO every time I go to boot camp. So I'm probably sure that I had a couple of beverages then too, when we were all together that time, Hoppy.
I'm hoping to come across some money so I can go to the boot camp this year. And if I do, I'm telling you right now, I probably won't drink as hard because, man, my reputation was to sleep in till noon and miss the morning panels. I don't know how some of these morning hosts, man, I'm going to keep the names quiet, but, man, you would have a wild night until 4 a.m. and then they'd be at the panel at 8:30 a.m. And I'm like, how are you up right now?
Yeah, I run a little high. It's really interesting. I have a condition which is called cyclothymia, which is basically bipolar's friendly cousin. You don't need medication to manage it because it's not as extreme, but I can run high. And when I get enthused or excited about something, my body it's almost like somebody injected cocaine into my system and I'm ready to go. And like even at the workplace, a lot of people I'm working with, because it's all new at iHeart, they're looking at me and they go, "You don't drink any coffee?" I go, "No, this is just me, brother." And they go, "That's insane." That's why, Hoppy, I can run that way. My daughter Sarah is the same way. And you've got to, Hoppy, I hope to see you at boot camp because there's a lot of cool people like you, a lot of young people like you, that show up, and especially, like there's a lot of great talented women that are there. I'm thinking of the Hannah B's of the world, the Ricky Sanchez's of the world, and the Angie Parkers of the world. I mean, there's just so much great talent that I'm happy that they want to be in our business. That's the first thing. And secondly, I'm happy that, women are really cutting through and showing that, hey, we just have as much of a right to be here as anybody else. And I know I'm missing some names because there's just so many great people that I hope you get there, Hoppy, because you're kind of the veteran now pretty much, and you're going to get to see the new Hoppies coming in.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's crazy. I still think because I'm quote unquote only 30, I think I don't want to say plenty of time, but I feel like once I'm 40, then I'll be definitely a veteran. But I have been at it for 12 years and have worked in 4 different markets. So maybe I am a veteran.
Oh, dude. And you have been maligned on the radio by some big talent, and you've bounced around and you've had to deal with a lot of crap. You're as veteran as everybody else. Oh, wow. You've earned your stripes, my friend. You really have.
I appreciate that, BJ. For people that have listened to us talk for the last hour and 5 minutes and want to check out your morning show, how can they find it?
Well, I love being able to say this. You can get it on the iHeart app, which is just search for KZOK, BJ Shea, and Sarah, and that's Sarah with an H. It's that easy, and you can listen on the app, or you obviously can go online. But really, the iHeart Radio app is the way to go. And it's so exciting to be able to say that, man. It's like I've dream come true to work for this company. It was a bucket list item. I thought, if you're really at the top of your game, you want to be playing for the best team. And, like right now, I think everybody wants to be on the LA Dodgers. And to me, that's exactly what I think has happened to me, is that I got to be on the LA Dodgers of radio. And that's iHeart. And that's what a great, my career ended at this particular station. And I decided that was it after a couple of years. I'm so happy I get to wrap it up with this company if that's how it come to be.
Well, dude, it's been a lot of fun having you on the show. I feel like this conversation was much more natural than previous interviews. And it just comes from doing a lot of interviews. And also, I've known you for so long that I kind of know when you're going to quit talking. It's very weird. With other people, I would interview them and I would thought they were done talking and then they would keep talking. But you have this really easy way of I just know when you're done talking. It's very hard to explain.
Yeah, and I try to not talk as much. I mean, I'm a big mouth and I'm a windbag, and I've always tried to be sure about that, because it sucks when you're in an interview and then all of a sudden you're the interviewer and the guy won't shut up, and you're like, so I said, man, I don't want to be that guy. So I do my best with that, Hoppy.
Well, BJ, I'm putting it out there that I'll be at, what is it, year 37 for the boot camp, 36? close. 36.
36, yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, do it, man. I know. Look, I get it. Money is money, and it's an extravagance to be able to travel to San Diego and get the plane, the hotel, and, of course, to pay the registration fee. I get that. I get it's not easy for people to do, but, man, it would be great to see your face, buddy.
I'm going to somehow make it happen. So, BJ, I'm going to put that out there into the universe. And once again, thank you for coming on to Hoppe Hour. This has been a lot of fun, bro.
My pleasure, man. Anytime. And hey, your interviewing skills have always been on point as far as I'm concerned. So it's always fun to talk to you.
Damn, bro. Thank you.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour.
And like that, he's gone.
Hoppe Hour is now over. Hoppe Hour is now over. Hoppe Hour is now over.